Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk from Jerusalem, Israel. Rabbi Chaim Richman here together with Yitzchak Reuven. Today is the 4th day of the month of Sivan. 5777. It is the 29th day of the month of May 2017. This Shabbat is Parshat Naso, the second Torah portion of the book of Numbers, but much more, shall I say, immediate than that is that we are now about to celebrate, to observe the Festival of Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. We are about to relive the Sinai revelation, the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. Tomorrow, that is to say, the 5th day of Sivan, 30th of May, is the eve of the Festival of Shavuot, which starts tomorrow night. And we are moving towards the conclusion of the counting of the Omer of the past 7 weeks. Today being day number 48. There's only one more to go, and we shall be standing at the foot of Mount Sinai again to receive the Torah. The Festival of Shavuot has a number of names. It's called Chag HaKatzir, which means the Festival of the Harvest. It's called Chag HaShavuot, Festival of Weeks. It's called Chag HaBikurim, Festival of First Fruit. It's also called by the Torah Atzeret, which means an assembly.
Also called Chag Matan Torah, no?
Ah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yitzchak says it's also referred to in the later rabbinical literature. And in fact, in the liturgy, is referred to as the Festival of the Giving of the Torah. But the phrases that I just mentioned, Chag HaKatzir, Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaBikurim, Atzeret, these are mentioned in the Torah. And of course, this connects us to the several interesting points. And we are very, very excited about Shavuot. It's been a long 7 weeks from Pesach through the connecting bridge of the counting of the Omer. And as we know, it's a process that we've been living through. It's a process of coming closer to becoming pure vessels to receive the Torah, to receive the light of Hashem. It's been about introspection and self-improvement and working on our attributes and getting back to where we were on the first night of Pesach, but what was a gift outright, and everything that we've been learning and teaching and studying and understanding together about the process of counting the Omer, counting to the point where we are ready to shed our slave mentality with which we left Egypt and stand upright and erect as human beings ready to serve the one true God. So more than anything else, more than any other festival, Shavuot can be said to be the paramount celebration of the land of Israel. I mean, Shavuot is so land of Israel oriented. It's about bringing the first fruits. And the first fruits are the 7 species of the land of Israel, for which the land of Israel is known and praised. And it's really about coming to Hashem with those first fruits and acknowledging His goodness in our lives. And of course, we put those first fruits into a basket made of words we've taught about for many years. We express our gratitude being the basis of everything in this world. But the interesting thing is, of course, I'm going to ask Yitzchak Reuven, and I know the answer already because he's so righteous and he's so good. Ask you a question. What are you going to be doing on Shavuot night, Yitzchak?
I'll be studying.
Studying what? The works of Shakespeare? You're going to be rereading Hamlet and Othello? W. Somerset Maugham? I don't think so.
I'll be studying Torah all night long.
Studying Torah all night long. Last night,
till the break of dawn.
I didn't get to sleep at all. Till the break of dawn. Because it is a time-honored custom to study Torah the whole night in intense, joyous, really, anticipation of the occasion of the anniversary of the Sinai revelation. There's a midrash that states that the Jewish people unbelievably overslept on the morning of the giving of the Torah. We don't want that to happen again. We want to fix that, so we show our great joy for Torah by staying up and studying it. But if I was to ask you this question, Yitzchak Reuven, how old is that custom?
That custom is... can I call a friend?
You could call a friend if you
Can
want
I
to.
ask the audience?
Do.
That custom is...
I believe it's mentioned in the Holy Zohar.
That custom is about 7,000 years old.
No.
500?
It's not all that old. And what I want to emphasize is, and of course, it is the most beautiful, precious, and nurturing and life-giving custom to stay up and show such honor for the Torah, not going to sleep even, not allowing sleep to cross our minds even, but sitting up and just being so thrilled about the fact that Hashem gave us the Torah. But that is not how Shavuot, which is the anniversary of the giving of the law, that is not how it was celebrated in the Holy Temple.
Not at all.
In the time of the Holy Temple, the main aspect of the service of God was the bringing of the first fruits to the Holy Temple. And I find that idea a dichotomy, really. I find it almost paradoxical. I find it to be so intriguing, so amazing, because one would normally think of the festival that commemorates, and of course in our Jewish mindset, our definition of a festival is not a commemoration but a reliving. So a festival that is all about reliving the giving of the Torah. I understand, staying up all night and studying the Torah as being part of that, as giving honor, as showing our affinity with the Torah study and our love and reverence for the Torah. But in the time of the temple, the time of revelation of everything, it was celebrated in a totally agrarian sense, in a totally agricultural sense. And yes, Shavuot is the festival par excellence of connection to the land of Israel. But the custom of studying the Torah was not prevalent in those days. It came about later in the exile. It wasn't the Eretz Israeli way of celebrating Shavuot. And I just think that I think that there are a lot of people who study Torah today that are not aware, because they're not so much connected to the land of Israel. They don't realize that in the time of the Holy Temple, that isn't even how it was celebrated. And then you ask them, well, how could it be? What's the connection of, bringing the first fruits of the land of Israel to the Holy Temple and the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai? How do we understand that? Do you hear what I'm saying? That at first glance, it might seem a little bit not consistent, because as we would think of Shavuot maybe as being ethereal, as being
right. One is
spiritual.
Intellectual, and one is very physical. One is the Torah itself was given outside the land, which is astonishing in its own right, and yet we celebrate Shavuot in the Holy Temple with an expression of our connection and our gratitude toward the land by bringing the first fruits. So, what is the connection between Mount Sinai and the Temple Mount, you might want to even say? Between the desert where we received and the land of Israel.
Exactly. Ask the question even better. What's the connection between Chag Shavuot, the Festival of Shavuot, Mount Sinai, the incredible revelation, the thunder, the lightning, the voice of Hashem, the giving of the Torah, and the Temple Mount, and the unsung field being tilled by the average farmer in the land of Israel? What's the connection? I'd like to propose that rather than answer this question immediately, I'd like you to keep it in mind. Keep it in mind, and we won't answer it right now. Instead, we will go on to another topic which is intrinsically and irrevocably connected, bound up with the same issue. And I think the timing is perfect. And I think that by delving into the second aspect of our conversation, we will come to the answer of this first question. And the second question is, we are now getting into the Book of Numbers. Book of Numbers is going to be accompanying us now the next few weeks. And I know, Yitzchak, you and I, a lot of water under the bridge. We really love the Book of Numbers. And it's an amazing experience to relate to and to try and connect to that generation, the generation known as the generation of the desert. And every year we try to go deeper and deeper in our understanding of who these people were, our forefathers, of course, that generation that received the Torah, that generation which exited Egypt, that generation which ultimately, I guess you have to say, is considered a failure because of what happened, that we're going to be reading about in a few weeks in Parshat Shalach, the terrible debacle of the spies. And it was decreed against them that they would not enter into the land. So this generation, the generation of the desert, if you had to define them in one word, because I think that they're an amazing generation, and we're going to talk about that right now. If you had to define them in one word, what would that word be? I would say it would be inscrutable. Inscrutable is defined as impossible to understand or interpret. Synonyms for inscrutable would be enigmatic, mysterious, unreadable, inexplicable, unexplainable, incomprehensible, impenetrable, unfathomable, unknowable. Why? Why do I say that? Because this generation, the generation of the desert that we are now reading about in the book of Numbers, is called a generation of knowledge. Dor Hade'ah. They were the generation that ate the manna, right? I mean, you know very well that we can talk about the manna a whole program, how it is the secret of everything, how eating it required total integrity, because it was like a prophet shining a light on all the nooks and crannies of their personalities. It illuminated who they were exactly, even the way it fell and the way that it was gathered. It was indicative of a person's level. Those that were more righteous, it fell right by their door, and those that had some work to do, it fell further from their door. It proved who a person was. It took a lot of strength just to be able to eat that stuff, right? So, but the thing is, why do I say that they were inscrutable? Why do I say that they were mysterious? Why do I say that they were so hard to understand? Because they were at once, apparently, at least the way we understand these Torah portions that we're going to be reading in the book of Numbers, they were at once so high, and yet they were capable of sinking so low. In other words, as a perfect example of the human condition, they were conflicted. They were very conflicted people. Now, on the one hand, we find in the teachings of our sages tremendous praise for this generation. We are told that they were perfect people. Midrash Shochar Tov on Tehillim says that they were perfect and pious, this generation. This is the generation that heard the voice of the Holy One, blessed be at Mount Sinai, right? Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, an ancient work that you and I enjoy studying, states that they merited to be like the administering angels. They never experienced an impure mission. They were untouched by any form of vermin, and in death they were untouched by worms or decay. In other words, they were very, very holy people. And we are taught by the sages that there will never be another generation like that until the time of the coming of the Messiah. And by the way, there's a whole discussion in different sources as to whether or not this generation has a place in the world to come. A very beautiful midrash in Bamidbar Rabbah that says as follows. First of all, before that, the previous teaching tells us that when Hashem raises the dead at the time of the resurrection, those people, generation of the desert, will be the first to be resurrected. There's a verse in Isaiah 26:19 that says, "Your dead shall come to life." So Chazal, the sages say, this is talking about the generation of the desert. So listen, here's the thing. It's Bamidbar Rabbah 19, right? Hashem says to Moshe, right? Moshe wanted to come into the land of Israel. So Hashem says to Moshe, how will it look if you come into the land of Israel without the generation of the desert? Hashem said to Moshe, it's the parable of a shepherd who went out to tend to the flock of the king, and all the sheep were captured, and then and he was left with nothing. And then the shepherd wanted to come back into the palace, and so it was said to him, if you come back in, they'll say that you're responsible for all this. So too Hashem said to Moshe, what, the nation that you took out of Egypt, you buried them in the desert, and now you want to come in? So the end of the Midrash says, you know what, you stay here with them, and in the future you're going to bring them back in. You're going to bring that generation into the land of Israel. So there are many, many teachings that talk about how that generation was very, very precious, very, very high, very, very special, and on a high spiritual level. But at the same time, as we know, they really were very flawed. That is, exemplified by the terrible sin of the spies, and that whatever it was that happened, whatever short circuit, whatever cosmic freakout, whatever cosmic lack of confidence that was, they plummeted to a terrible depth of lack of faith, and the spies spoke, and the nation accepted the terrible lashon hara, evil speech against the land of Israel, and Hashem decreed, this is it, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And actually, sages say 10 times altogether they tested Hashem, as it were. So this is why I say inscrutable, because they're called a generation of knowledge. They're called the ones who ate the manna. They're called the ones who heard Hashem's voice. They received the Torah. They had this incredibly intimate relationship with the Creator, and yet they look pretty bad. Again, superficially, people study the Book of Numbers. It's also referred to by some in a very fond way as the Book of Mistakes, because it records all the mistakes of this generation. And there's even a controversy amongst the great sages as to whether or not that generation has a place in the world to come. And of all people, the great and compassionate Rabbi Akiva, his position in that Talmudical discussion is that they don't have a place in the world to come. This is very hard to understand. So what I want to do is I want to connect all of this to our first point, which is the irony of the way Shavuot is celebrated in the time of the Holy Temple as an agricultural expression, as an expression of our total connection on a physical level to the land of Israel, and the way it's celebrated without the Holy Temple, which is, I shouldn't say only by Torah study, because Torah study is absolutely wonderful, but it's not exactly, there's something missing from this picture, something wrong with the picture.
It's also understood, our sages teach us, that we all stood at Mount Sinai.
Correct.
Which makes us all representatives of the generation of the desert, of the wilderness. And when we enter the land of Israel, we are entering the land of Israel not just on our own behalf, but I think on behalf of that generation. And when we bring our first fruit up to the Holy Temple on Shavuot, we are doing so, again, on behalf of that entire generation and expressing our gratitude. And it's sort of a redemptive process, I would say, and this goes basically in line with the other teaching you gave, that eventually that generation does come into the land. And maybe that generation is entering the land through us today, who have the privilege to be here.
This is exactly why this issue is so important. To me, this whole conversation that we're having, this whole analysis, is not just for the sake of Torah study. It's not just an interesting topic. It's very, very real and actual, because, like you said, we are that generation. And again, especially if you understand level of Torah study of the weekly portion that we always try to emphasize that it's about us. We're not reading about someone else. We're reading the story of our lives. This is especially the tradition of the Holy Masters, the students of the Baal Shem Tov. This is our own story. So we are this generation. So it so behooves us to understand their inscrutable nature. And why is it that on the one hand, they were so high, they were so close to Hashem, and yet on the other hand, when it came to the sin of the spies and their inability to translate the Torah into the reality of going into the land of Israel, why they failed so dismally? Because I believe that understanding what this is really all about and who these people were, and that we're going to be accompanying over the entire book of Numbers, that we have to basically rectify and understand what it was all about for our own tikkun. If we understand that, then we can understand a very, very deep insight into the Festival of Shavuot and what this, contrast between the Festival of the Fields and the bringing of the first fruits, how that really relates to its manifestation and its expression and manifestation of the festival as the festival of receiving Torah and studying the Torah all night. That's why these issues are so connected. And so it's actually, what we're going to see, I think, is that they're actually one. They're one and the same. All of these concepts are one and the same. And the real issue is, here we are, a day away, God willing, from the Festival of Shavuot. We're going to study the whole night. We cherish the Torah. We honor it. We're so appreciative of the King giving us this gift. But what is it exactly? What is it? What does it translate into? How does it affect us? How does it transform us? What is our connection to make it real? That's what we really have to learn here, and there's no better example and way of understanding this than through, God willing, a deep understanding of that generation and how it relates to the Festival of Shavuot. So a little bit of a cliffhanger here, but as soon as we return to Temple Talk, we are going to do our best to address these questions and more. And in the meantime, very, very excited and anticipatory for a beautiful Festival of Shavuot here in the land of Israel. Right back. Stay with us. Temple Talk.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven with Rabbi Chaim Richman here in Jerusalem, Israel. Did you hear that, State Department? Here in Jerusalem, Israel. Today is the fourth day of the month of Sivan 5777, 29th of May, 2017. This week's upcoming Torah reading is Naso, which we have been talking about, the second parsha, the second reading of the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. And tomorrow night is the Festival of Shavuot, the pilgrimage festival, one of three Torah pilgrimage festivals in which the entire nation of Israel would leave their little homesteads, their villages, their farms, and go up to Jerusalem to celebrate and to honor God. And of course, God promises in Torah that whatever we leave behind for the day or the week or however long it takes us to travel to Jerusalem and back will be protected and safe and waiting for us when we get back home. Rabbi, you've been relating and making the connection between the generation then and the generation now, talking all about receiving Torah and Shavuot and its connection. And what's the connection between receiving Torah in Mount Sinai and bringing the first fruits? Another connection I like to make in our contemporary world, which we've been talking so much. We just completed the month of ER, which is the bridge between Passover and Shavuot, which the bulk of the 49 days of the Omer take place. In fact, today, I didn't mention, you mentioned earlier, it's the 48th day, one more day to count, and then Shavuot. And we have these new beautiful holidays and reasons to celebrate now in our modern era in the month of Iyar. It always strikes me that that first holiday, which is the holiday of Yom Ha'atzmaut, independence, is really our physical return to the land of Israel and physical liberation. And it so much parallels the Exodus, the Passover, which we leave the land of Egypt, we gain our freedom, but it's really the beginning of a process to ultimately gain our total freedom, which is our spiritual freedom. And that is reflected in our modern era by Jerusalem Day, Yom Yerushalayim, which was last week, which was such an intense week for us here, being the 50th Jubilee anniversary of the liberation of Jerusalem in 1967. But that coming so close to Shavuot, to me, in this modern era, symbolizes again that being back at Mount Sinai, returning to the source of our spiritual freedom and Torah, receiving Torah. And I think it's a very, very beautiful reminder of who we are and the path that we're on. Another thing which always impresses me so much, and I think it really also fits into exactly with what you're saying, is the fact that of all the festival pilgrimages mentioned in Torah, the only one that's not given a date, an independent date, is Shavuot. We know that the Chag Pesach, the festival of Passover, begins on the 14th, is the day of the bringing of the Passover offering, and then the 15th is the beginning of the 7 days of the festival of Passover. And we know that Sukkot also is given its specific date, the 15th of the month. The same with Rosh Hashanah, and same with Yom Kippur. But Shavuot, we're just told it's 49 days plus one after the first day of Passover, meaning it's totally upon us to count and to bridge that difference and to basically set the date of Shavuot. And it's our responsibility, and it's sort of our first responsibility once leaving Egypt. And we can't, 49 days, we can't miss a beat, because if we do, then there's no end, there's no happy ending to the story. There's no receiving Torah at Mount Sinai. So I think it's a huge responsibility that God gave us, and gave it to us with tremendous love and confidence that we would be able to fulfill that and arrive as a nation at Mount Sinai.
And again, it's like the secret of freedom, of becoming totally free. The verse in Exodus that talks about the tablets of the law, it says in Hebrew, charut al haluchot, which means that Hashem's words were engraved, charut, on the tablets. But of course the Torah was not given with any vowels, and so the same word can be read differently. And so the sages actually interpret this, and they say that it's possible to read this verse not as the word charut al haluchot, but cherut al haluchot, which means freedom. This is the same letters as engraved. Sages are saying, read this to be telling you that there is freedom on their tablets.
Yeah.
Meaning that in order to really be a free person, as the sages say, you have to be in servitude, in service to Hashem. And of course, this is the whole idea of this transition that we've been going through, this spiritual transition, working on our character traits from Passover, on the emotional aspects of our nature, that trying to get everything under control and in check and back in the driver's seat, that on the second day of Passover, the offering that's brought in the Holy Temple is an omer, hence the expression, which is a dry measurement of barley, which is basically animal food. But that on Shavuot, there is a very unique offering that's brought to the Holy Temple, which is the only time that chametz, leaven, is ever brought to the temple. It is the twin loaves of wheat bread that are brought to the Holy Temple, significant of the fact that over these 7 weeks we have we have shed, hopefully, the constricted consciousness of the slave mentality, and we've evolved, as it were, into actual men. And a man has the ability to make a choice, to choose between right and wrong. And armed with the Torah at Mount Sinai and later in the Holy Temple, which is a continuation of the Sinai experience, we are no longer afraid of what chametz represents this time in the Holy Temple, because we are ready to be true servants of Hashem, free at last, freedom on the tablets. So we're talking about that generation, and again, these are our ancestors, our forefathers, the most wonderful generation in the world, and we are them, and we need to understand what this is all about, and need to understand the holy and beautiful and compassionate Rabbi Akiva having a position in a discussion with his colleagues, saying that they don't even have a portion in the world to come. And come along some of the great masters who explain what he's saying exactly on the deepest level. Open up your heart, deepest way. What is Olam Haba? What is the state of the next world, the world to come, the rectified world? It's where everything is the way it should be in terms of all the things are fixed, and every type of lacking and insufficiency is fulfilled, and the unit is complete, and the knowledge is complete. And basically, what Rabbi Akiva is saying is that, and he's saying it kind of tongue-in-cheek or in a whimsical way. You know why Rabbi Akiva is saying that they don't have a portion of the world to come? Because they were already there. Because they were living on that level already in this world. That's how perfect they were. So he's not saying it in a negative way. He's saying it in a positive way, as if, where could they go from here? How far? The only way to go is up, and they're already there. But then, again, how do we explain their miserable failings? Excuse me for saying, but they were miserable failings. What happened with the golden calf? Actually, yes, with the golden calf. But Hashem was more concerned about the sin against the land of Israel, as we know, than against their outright idolatry. When they spoke against the land of Israel, that was the last straw. And all the annoyances that they annoyed Hashem, and all their backsliding. How do we understand this? How do we understand this conflict? How do we understand this dichotomy of their being so on the one hand high and on the other hand so low? Reminds you of Black Crow Blues, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So the thing is, open your heart in the deepest way. This is the greatest secret of all, of what's going on here. You hear this? It's not that, they were so conflicted, and yet they were the generation that received the Torah. That's why they received the Torah. That's why they were so special. That's why they were so holy. That's why they were so high. That's why they were so beloved, because they were conflicted, because that's what it means to be a person. And there's no one more realistic than Hashem himself. And there's no medicine, and there's no hope for man like the Torah. And their conflict is not, their state of this this confliction is not, in spite of that, they were the ones that were called the generation of knowledge. No, that's why they were the generation of knowledge, because they were people. So look, here's the point. When it comes to what happened with Parashat Shalach, that we'll be reading in a few weeks, and the stand that they took, unfortunately, against the land of Israel, you know very well that there are two different ways of understanding what happened. One puts them in a very negative light, that they wanted to retain their power of leadership, that they all different reasons for why they didn't want to go into the land of Israel. But another level, a school of thought about why they didn't want to go into the land was because they did not want to give up the level of closeness and intimacy that they felt with Hashem in the desert, where they were kind of living like in a...
You mean like having to grow up?
Yeah. They were kind of like living in an incubator, like they were so... They had this umbilical cord.
Didn't want to cut the apron strings?
Hmm?
Didn't want to cut the apron strings?
They were being fed from God's table, right? And then the day that they crossed over into the land, they had to begin tilling the soil and planting crops. They no longer had...
And bringing the first fruits.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the thing is, The mistake that they made was in thinking that this is as good as it gets. Wow, we're living in the desert. We're so close to them. They didn't ever want that to end because they had this tremendous, tremendous relationship with Hashem. And what they didn't understand, the mistake that they made, was that it gets even better. You know when it gets better? When you have to be a real person, make decisions, choose, and bring Hashem's light into this world. In other words, they were like under this dome, like they were like living in this like protected environment the whole time they were in the desert, and not understanding that going into the land and bringing the mitzvot with them and living on the land and bringing that to a pristine level of holiness, and from there emanating Hashem's light to the whole world, that's what it really means to be a person. So that was the mistake that they
must
made.
Be what it's all about.
Exactly. So,
can I just interrupt? You mentioned why this, they were conflicted, and that's why they were chosen to be the generation to receive Torah. But if they had been righteous without flaw, how are we to receive Torah? If that's what it takes to reach that height, then how are we ever going to reach that height? So I think that it was God's tremendous rachmanut, His tremendous loving kindness, that He said, you know what, I'm going to give it to this generation, which is going to show every flaw possible in human nature, so that every generation, every human being will know that he too can reach the same heights that they reach.
And the more that we understand this, and we understand the nature of that generation, the more we understand how they perfectly exemplify what Torah is supposed to be for us. And this is exactly why they received it. So yes, they were full of conflict, but that was the whole beauty of that generation. And ultimately, they did not bring it where it had to be. But the position of our sages unanimously is that they most certainly have a place in the world to come. That their preeminence is undisputed, and as Rabbi Akiva's insight points out to us, they were so high. They were as high as it gets, but we can still go higher. And so this connects in a very beautiful way to the secret of the Festival of Shavuot. And the question that would be asked by somebody, like, what? The festival of when you stood at Mount Sinai and you had an astral projection, and the world was returned to its pristine state of perfection, and all illnesses and blemishes were healed, and you perceived in heaven that there's only Hashem, and you heard His voice, and you saw the thunder and the synesthesia and everything that happened there. So you're going to celebrate that by bringing some crops to the Holy Temple, and this is exactly the point of what we learn from the attitude of that generation as brought to its crisis level in the debacle of the spies, coming into the land of Eretz Israel, tilling the soil, growing the crops, doing all of the mitzvot. That is the tikkun. That is the rectification of Adam, of everything, of the Garden of Eden. And so listen to this, right? One thing that we said so far that I think is the deepest statement in the world is that they received the Torah not in spite of there being a conflicted generation, but because they were. And now the second statement that I want to make to summarize this is that, the celebration of Shavuot, its observance of bringing the first fruits to the Holy Temple, is the perfect manifestation of what Torah really is. Because the mistake that they made, according to this level of understanding, is that they wanted to live in the desert under these perfect conditions where they saw and beheld these wonders of their relationship with Hashem. But it wasn't real, you see, Yitzchak. And this is a sad thing. It wasn't real. I mean, it was real. Hashem was real, and it was really dealing with them and giving them the manna and everything. But that's not the goal of the human condition. The goal of the human condition is to live like a person, be conflicted, make the right choices, and live in this world. So the beauty of the first fruits as being the way Shavuot is celebrated and manifest is that this is exactly what Torah is. Torah is not just a mental exercise, and it's not just philosophical or beautiful, beautiful cosmic meditations and understandings of the dynamics of the universe and who Hashem is. It's this world right here. It's this earth. It's this soil. It's taking Hashem's word and fulfilling it in this world. And thus, while beautiful and holy, a custom is to study the Torah the whole night, the most beautiful and the most holy thing of all is to till the soil and to bring the first fruits to the Holy Temple and say to Hashem, thank you. Thank you for giving me the Torah, and here is my acknowledgement of you in this world. So you see, connecting the dichotomy of these two customs, the first fruits versus the study of Torah all night, and understanding the inscrutable nature of the generation of the desert, it's all really one and the same. It's the same concept. It is the immutable, beautiful reality of what Torah means to us. It's about transforming this world into a place of Hashem's presence by being real people. And so it's just so profound, I think.
Another way to envision it, I think, is in a story embodied in the story of Elijah, in the book of Kings. And we know that he was troubled and he wanted to reconnect with God, and he went all the way to Mount Sinai. He went right back to the place where Torah was handed down. And of course he climbed up, and there was the lightning and the thunder and all sorts of drama. And finally, there is a still small voice. And that's what he had to take away. And that still small voice is in that first fruit. It's what I have to add to the equation, what my part in creation, my part in connecting with God. And it may be a very, very small gesture, but it's the world. It's the world, because it's what I did. It's what I did with God's gift to me.
And of course, Yitzchak, this is also very reminiscent of what you like to refer to as the 11th commandment. Mm-hmm. Back in Parshat Yitro, where after the incredible revelation at Sinai and the 10 Commandments, Hashem says, when you build me an altar of earth. Mm-hmm. Because it's this world that I love. Yeah. It's this world that I want to be in and that I want to be recognized in and served in. And you don't have to think that you can't serve me because I have no beginning and no end, and because at Sinai you perceived on a prophetic level the incredible, unspeakable majesty of it all. No, this is what I want. I want you to be people, and I want you to elevate this world.
And because it comes from you, it means the world to me, as God is saying. So
may we merit to make it all real and to have a beautiful, beautiful festival of Shavuot. I need to say, Yitzchak, I need to give just a little heads up here to our friends in Abilene, Texas, and in Lubbock, Texas, that on the evening of Tuesday, June 20th, Be'ezrat Hashem, the 26th day of the month of Sivan, I hope to be speaking in Abilene. Details to follow. And on Sunday, Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, the 25th of June, I hope to be speaking together with Mrs. Richman in South Plains Hebraic Center in Lubbock, Texas. That's all I have to say at this point about that.
Okay. What else do you have to say in general? As we conclude the last few minutes of this show before we sign off for Shavuot.
I'm just feeling so elated from the wonderful experience of counting the Omer. We're not done yet. We have one more to count.
One more day. Don't blow
it. And I hope that we will truly merit, all of us together with our wonderful listeners, to really stand at Mount Sinai and receive the Torah completely, internally, and to live with it every day, and to live with Hashem's presence in our midst every day.
And there is a spot there for everybody at Mount Sinai. And unless you happen to have been better or worse than that one generation in the desert, then you have a place there. And I think we all can fit in that generation.
And I think that they are such an inspiration to us because they are so perfectly human. Not perfect, but perfectly human.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what Torah is all about.
That's the plan. Get back to our humanity. Be the people that God intended for us to be when He created man out of the dust of the earth. So, thank you so much for being with us, Temple Talk. And tomorrow night, we begin Shavuot. And we wish everyone, all of our listeners, everybody out there, a very, very wonderful, joyful, and blessed Shavuot. And may we all strive and endeavor to receive Torah once again this Shavuot. Thanks for being with us, Temple Talk.